Hello everybody and welcome back to the Balls Back channel. In today's video, I'm going to be analyzing some more of my brother's games. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay guys, so let's get into the first game. This first game was played by my brother, and it was a rapid game. So, we have the move e4. Yeah, the move pawn to e4, e5. Now, this is obviously very standard. We have queen h5, so obviously this is not a good move, as you can see from the eval bar here. So the reason is because it's just not good to bring your queen out this early in the opening, where it can easily be attacked by other pieces. And really the only value of this move is that if you're playing at a very beginner level, where many people will just choose to attack this pawn with the move g6, but this immediately wins the game for white, as white can just play queen takes e5, which is a fork on the rook and the king, and no matter how the threat is blocked, the rook will be taken the next move, and obviously white is completely winning. But in this game, my brother played the correct move, which is the move knight to c6. Now, this is obviously the best move. Reason being, it doesn't really attack the queen at all, but the queen is looking kind of offside here, and this pawn is now defended, so now g6 can come next move. So bishop c4, obviously with the threat of queen to f7, the scholar's mate, but now you have the move g6, and after queen to f3, knight to f6. Now, this is by far the most popular line that is accompanied with the wayward queen attack, or queen to h5. So after this, d4, which is also a very bad move, because now this pawn is being hung in not one but two different ways, but by far the most superior way is to take it with the knight, attacking the queen, threatening this fork. The only two really good moves here, three good moves here, are this one, excuse me, two moves, and this one, because these defend against the fork. But in this position, e takes d4 is played. Now, this is also a very good move, but now you have kind of opened up the center a little bit, and now moves like bishop to g5 are available to be played, which is what happens in the game. Now, there are really two good options here for black, bishop to g7 and bishop to e7, and bishop to e7 is chosen, followed by knight h3. So now, no side has spent more than 20 seconds at this point in the game. They started with 10 minutes, and they spent 13 seconds and 17 seconds respectively. Now, knight to h3 is actually a pretty good move. The logic being you just want to kind of develop your pieces. You want to bring this out and preferably castle long so you can get this knight into the game and start attacking. One of the only good things about this kind of line is that castling kingside is never really without risk, because after you castle this, there are holes on this side of the board, and if the bishop plays here, the rook will have to move, and you can usually try to bring some kind of attack here. So now the move h6 is played, which is a pretty good move. This completely kicks the bishop out, and so now the bishop takes the knight, gets taken by the bishop, and now we have a completely dominant position for the black pieces, as there's really no attack anymore, there's really no steam over here, and black can even choose to play d6 at some point, develop this c8 bishop, bring out the queen, and even long castle to ensure the safety of the king. So after this, the move g4 is played, which is a very ambitious move, but a lot of the times what beginners will do is they will push pawns without realizing that every pawn move is actually super committal. You don't want to make pawn moves for no reason. Here, this move really holds no threat at all, because g5 will be just met by taking the pawn with either the bishop or the pawn. So a lot of the time they will make these kind of pawn moves, and they will kind of weaken these two squares, which are incidentally both dark squared. So this bishop can even go to g5 here, and if it's sorry, this is the blunder. But the idea is at some point in the future, maybe after castling kingside, the move bishop to g5 can be played, and at this point, if it's taken like this, then you can take with the queen, and you have a very comfortable position. You can play d6 and start targeting this weak pawn here, all of which was caused by just this move, pawn to g4. So, because of this, Chessmujun meets the threat of g4 with g5, which is not the best move. It kind of blocks in this bishop here, and it doesn't really do anything too great. Again, g5 was never really a threat to begin with, but now his opponent responds with the even more crazy move, pawn to e5, which is even worse. Not only does this hang a pawn, it also hangs a fork if taken by the knight. So the only really trick here is that if you take with the bishop, it's mate in one. But that doesn't happen in the game. Instead, the pawn is taken by the knight. So again, very common beginner pattern. No time is being used here on the 10th move of the game. The total time spent is less than a minute between both sides. So now after queen to d5, threatening once again a mate in one, Chessmujun simply plays the move queen to e7 and now defends not only this pawn but also prepares some kind of discovered threat ideas against the white king. So after queen takes d4 check, there's a multitude of ways to win here. One of the most convincing wins is knight takes c4. It's a discovered check, and after a move such as king to d1, you can simply play something like bishop d4, and you can even play knight takes b2, throw in a little check there, a nice little trick. The idea is after this, the rook is trapped, so you're going to win back the material that you gave. So after this, however, Chessmujun misses the way to win a lot of material and instead castles kingside, which is still a completely fine move. Black is completely dominating here, and after bishop to d3, knight takes d3 check, the game is completely over. King to d2, bishop d4, and now the entire white position is collapsing. There's no material left for the white army, and now after taking this pawn, queen to b4 here, sealing the deal. Very nice move here. Preparing the rooks to come into the game and maybe start some attacking ideas, but also trying to take this pawn and maybe attack this square in the future. And here, white, seeing what awaited them, instead of resigning, simply abandoned the game after spending about 2 minutes here. So, a very convincing win by Chessmujun, and so it's a good start. So let's move on to the next game, where Chessmujun is playing with the black pieces again. So we have the moves d4, which I believe is a first in these game analysis videos. Move d4, also pretty commonly played at the beginner level, right? So after d5, the move c4, very commonly known as the Queen's Gambit. And this gambit has a lot of ideas. In every gambit, the goal is to give up a pawn to achieve something. Better center control, better piece activity, or in some cases, a lot of attacking potential. So the Queen's Gambit has a very popular line that goes like this. E3 can be played, E4 can be played. Also very popular here is the move knight to c3, just preparing anything against this kind of move. So the Queen's Gambit is one of the most versatile openings in chess. And after the move c6, which we call the Slav defense, very solid option, very, very solid, aims to kind of create a nice pawn base surrounding this d5 pawn and just kind of develop the pieces, maybe put some fianchettos in the future and castle kingside. Very popular opening. And after knight f3, d takes c4, bishop f4, and knight f6. This is a very... it's kind of an unusual line here, but it's fine for both sides. And you can notice that white has actually spent a good amount of time in the opening, spending about 40 seconds so far in this game. So after e3, knight b to d7, which is kind of a weird move here. You don't really want to play this knight b to d7. Once any kind of e-pawn move is made in the Queen's Gambit accepted, you immediately want to think about hey, what is this bishop attacking? Is this attacking my pawn? And the only move to actually keep an advantage here is b5, defending this. And if something like a4 here holds no value, because you can basically do anything. For example, play e6, and taking will just lead to an improved pawn structure and a much better position for white. Black. So because of this, knight b to d7 is not a good move, because now this pawn can simply be taken and white has a better pawn structure and better development. And it's played here, and after pawn to e6, we have the move knight to c3. So very standard, very kind of standard setup here for both sides. And after bishop to b4, castle kingside, is a very nice position for white, who has some good development. So after bishop c3, bc3, and the move b5, simply attacking the bishop. Now, what a lot of people will do here is they will actually play the move bishop to b3, but there's really nothing to be done here. And after the move a5, you have the chance to expand some space, maybe play the move c5 in the future, and kick out this bishop with tempo. Anyway, this bishop is going to end up on something like c2, so you might as well play bishop to d3 to begin with, which is by far the most superior move. But in this position, white plays the move knight to e5, simply hanging a bishop in one move after playing super well so far, simply hanging a bishop. And after b takes c4, and the move knight takes c6, maybe they thought that the queen was trapped or something, but it is not trapped. The only move that actually saves the queen is the move queen to b6 here, which is played. And after knight back to e5, takes, and now we have knight to e4 with a simply dominant position. Actually, even better here is knight to d5, targeting this pawn and this bishop, but knight to e4 will do as well, as it is completely winning. So, knight to e4, rook to b1, attacking the queen. Queen to c6 happens, and now we have rook b4, knight takes c3, and this is very easy to wrap up for the black pieces, and queen to d4, so white is trying to get some activity here. Massive time deficit, 3 minutes to 8 minutes here, and it's not going to be any good for, it's not going to do any good for white. And after the very nice move, bishop to b7, by the way, sacrificing this knight with the threat of mate. Very nice move. So white plays f3 to defend the mate, and now this very nice fork, knight to e2, which is going to pick up the queen. And after this series of moves, castling, bringing the rook into the game, rook to c1, king to b8, sidestepping any kind of action along the c-file, and after rook takes, queen to e7, g4, and h6, g5, takes, and rook takes. Everything is going to come in. After the king moves anywhere, this pawn is going to be taken. This queen is going to line up along the diagonal and create some threats. So after king g3, rook takes a2, bishop takes d8, and queen takes d8. White lost on time in a completely losing position. So that is also a very clean win here. So now we have the next game. Chessmujun versus Just a Noob, 1-2-2-3-4, and now he's playing the white pieces in yet another 10-minute game. So we have pawn to e4, d5, the Scandinavian defense, very popular opening at a lot of levels, and the idea is after takes, knight there, you can either go queen a5 or queen d8, or in some cases you can actually even give a check, and after bishop d2, bishop e2, bishop g4, excuse me, there are many moves here, but the general idea is to kind of get your queen active in the opening. But now, white plays a very, very common beginner mistake, which is to not take the pawn and actually go for this move e5, which is kind of a dodgy move, doesn't really do a lot. And so the idea of this can be expressed as trying to prohibit the knight from coming here, which is valid thinking. But after the very nice move c5, this completely grabs the center, and you can notice that if the pawn were still on e4, it would still control, and you can keep some tension. But now with the pawn being on e5, it's too overextended, and it can't be easily defended. And now black has an iron grip on the d4 square. So after knight to c3, d4, black is actually completely dominating out of the opening without any question. So bishop to b5 check here, very nice move. And after knight to c6, takes, and knight to e2. Now this is a tad bit passive. What's actually better is playing the move knight to a4, and then after something like queen to d5, which attacks this and defends this at the same time, you would go knight f3, and play would resume like this. But knight to e2 is played, which is a slightly passive move, like I said before. And now the only move to keep an advantage is actually the same move I mentioned before, queen to d5. But black misses it and plays the move e6. And e6 is not a good move for a few reasons. This bishop should be somewhere along this diagonal, and now it cannot inhabit that. b7 is a very bad square because these two pawns are doubled, they're blocked, and you're going to have to do a lot of work just to get the ideal diagonal. And bishop to a6 can easily be completely deferred by playing the move pawn to d3 and hoping to bring out this dark squared bishop. So that's why e6 isn't a great move. And after c3, d3 here, very nice move by black, completely tying down the knight and creating a lot of weaknesses in white's position. White plays knight to g3, and after the move c4 here, there's an iron grip And then queen to a4, bishop d7. This is a massive blunder. Now you can just take this pawn and start chipping away at the pawns. But white misses it and plays knight to f3. And after queen h4, a simple hang of a queen. You can literally take that queen and it's taken here. And after rook to b8, queen a7, rook d8, knight to e4, and then f5 here, trying to kick out the knight. Obviously, you have to play en passant. I'm just kidding. You don't have to play en passant. You can actually play this check here, and after takes, the king is completely stranded. White's pieces will come swarming in. The bishop will be liberated. The rooks will be brought into the game, and the game will be simply over. After knight f6, castles, kingside castles, rook e1, knight g4, and now we have this move, knight takes f5 here, with the idea of kind of opening this for the white pieces. Very nice move here. And after e takes f4, we have rook e7 attacking this bishop. And after rook e8, we have takes. We have the move. After rook e8, we have a simply horrifying turn of events after rook takes d7, which is literally the only move that loses the game. I think there could actually be other moves. Even actually a move like queen b8 isn't all that bad. It's losing, but it's not as losing as some other moves. Actually, even queen e7 is actually winning, because after takes, check, takes to force the trade of rooks. You can take like this and enter a completely winning endgame with just an extra rook here. But the problem is that's not going to happen. And after rook takes e7, the simple blunder of a maiden one via rook e1 checkmate. Very disappointing win, but that's what happens. And again, a very common beginner mistake. Throughout this entire 20-move game, both sides only spent around a minute and 30 seconds. So you could say that's around maybe 7 seconds per move here. So let's move on to the next game, where we have H. Grob from Switzerland versus Chessmujun. So we have e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6. Knight f3, knight f6. Knight f3, f6, sorry. And we have the Damiano defense. Now, the Damiano defense is most famous for being a comedic opening trap where you can actually ignore every single opening principle and take this pawn here on e5. And after f takes e5, queen h5, g6 can be played, but most often you'll find people playing king e7 in order to avoid any kind of fork or loss of material. But unfortunately, queen e5, king to f7, and bishop to c4, followed by a brutal mating attack in which king to g6, queen f5 here, and now you can simply play the move d4 check, and after g5 you can play h4, simply destroying any of the king's defenses, and it'll be game over soon. The eval bar says it's a forced mate in 9. So this is a very bad opening to play. Oftentimes, most people who actually play it for real are going to just surrender that pawn via some kind of gambit, but it's still one of the worst gambits to play. Strongly recommend that you do not ever play this. So after the move g6 here, queen e5, and just simply picking up the rook. And now, this game, which should last about maybe 10 or 20 more moves, lasted for another 35 moves of just complete beginner trying to convert a winning position. So after queen e5 check, bishop e2, actually a much better move in this position is actually to play the move king to d1, which looks very odd, but bishop e2 is just kind of unnecessarily passive, and this pin can be really maintained here. Not to mention that queen g2 is obviously a very looming possibility. So after bishop e2, queen e6, and queen to c3. Very safe alternative, bringing the queen back to make sure there's no kind of trapping business here. But after b6, which is simply not a good move. You really just want to develop. Keep things simple. I mean, it's already a lost game, but a move like knight e7, knight f6, maybe even bishop h6 in some lines, maybe knight c6, anything really, like d6 even, bringing the queen back, you know, king d8 even to defend. But b6 is kind of too slow here, and creating weaknesses around this kind of color complex is not a good idea. Now, you can see that black's light scored bishop can be considered to be its worst piece other than this rook, and creating weaknesses on that kind of color complex is not a good idea, because say for example after a move like king d1, and if I just play some random move for black here, this kind of move can easily be very crushing, and you'll have to be forced into trading, which is not something you want to do when you're down material. So after queen f3, same idea really, except without the king d1 moving the bishop. Normally if you want to attack on a diagonal, the bishop is better because you want to use your queen for attacking or moving vertically or horizontally, especially if your rooks are not yet in the game. But this is still a really good move, and after d5 you can actually play this move c4 here, which is played. And now after bishop b7, very simple. You can castle here actually. You can play knight c3. You can castle, you can play knight c3, you can even play d3 maybe. But in this position, the move cx d5 is played, and the reason moves like this are not recommended is because now you're just bringing your opponent's pieces into the attack without any kind of reason to do so. There's not a good reason to do so here. And so it's still completely winning due to the material advantage, but after bishop takes d5, now you're really it's kind of a weird position for you. You know, this bishop is obviously very good. This bishop is going to be brought out to c5, and so will this knight. So after queen to e3 trying to trade, takes, and now bishop c5, like I said. But now it's simply lost. You know, there's not enough attacking opportunities for black to get counterplay, and after the move castles kingside, very nice move, putting this rook on the very open file here. Knight c6, and now knight to c3. Castles and takes. Trading is always good when you're down material, right? And here it's kind of crazy because actually this is a complete blunder of a rook. You can just take this, and the funny thing is black is better, but only better by minus 0.5. You can see it's only minus 0.5 here, and that's because it's simply kind of a weird position here where these with the bishop pair, really anything is possible. But that's actually missed, which is crazy, right? It's just a free rook there. Like you have 4 legal moves, I think. Yeah, maybe you have 4 legal moves. So you can either play this move, you can play this move, you can play this move, or you can play that move. So you really have only that many legal moves, or you can play this move. So you don't have that many options here even. And black plays what might be the worst of them all, king to b7, and hangs this piece in one move. And now there's no question as to whether if white is going to win this game. And after knight to d4, again, just simply blundering. An entire piece for no reason. Takes with check, but there's no point in playing on anymore. And then after king h1, rook to f5, bishop f3 here, very nice move. King to a6, rook to b7, trying to find some action with this kind of checks, with these kind of checks here. And after that move, you have takes, knight there takes. You have this move. After king h1, you have rook there, but after check, rook to b8, you have this move rook here. Again, always trying to force this kind of mate, because there's no other thing you can do with black here. It's just completely lost cause. You can't do anything. And so after the move, bishop b6 here, bishop b7, very nice move. King there, h3 to provide some luft for the king. Check there, g3, rook e2, king there, and you can take the pawn, but there's really no point. It's completely losing. And now this really pretty funny move, king to g1 here, just completely ignoring this kind of attack you have raging here on the queen side. And after rook there, you have to move the bishop back, but it's too late. Very nice move, d3 here, threatening to fork, and really there's nothing you can do. So after rook e2, king f1, you have bishop to d3, and after check, king there, which is actually a sacrifice of a rook. And the reasoning behind this is that if you take, then you can play rook a8, and now you have a raging, now you're gonna attack this pawn. And so that's why after rook takes h3, bishop d2, king d5, check here. It's a forced mate in 3 after king c5, rook a2, which is a very weird move. The idea is actually you can go rook c1 check and actually just king d4, bishop c3, king c5, and now the move pawn to b4 checkmate, pawn checkmate. And I believe there's also another mate in 1. Oh, sorry, there's another mate in 3. There's a mate in 3 you can actually play here, which is bishop e1, which is kind of funny. And after bishop e1 here, you can play actually bishop c3, and with the same idea of coming back and then doing the same exact mate. So that is a move that can be played. But after rook a2, which is a really, really kind of weird move, especially given that you've been attacking this whole time, and now you play rook a2, which is really weird, but it's still completely winning. And after king d4, rook to a3 here, and then check there. You lose the rook, but it's all good. And finally, you have this nice move, rook to d5, checkmate. Yeah. So thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.